Hello again, it's Louise from Eleanor Grace. I've got another video here for you on another stitch. As you may have seen from my previous videos, I've got my little stitch sampler here with all sorts of different stitches that I use for my workshops. I do have virtual workshops that are available through my group, which I'll put a link in on the YouTube page and also on the comments on this video. So today we're going to focus on herringbone stitch, and the way I teach this, I did gain some advice from the slow stitch groups, from my friends in the slow stitch group, regarding a certain wording that I tend to use, which is a wigwam or TP, and you will probably clearly see why I use that terminology. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't something that could be used in an inappropriate way, and my American friends on the group have kindly sort of reassured me that it's absolutely fine. So we'll get looking at herringbone stitch. It is a really lovely stitch, and you can do lots of different fancy versions of it. It does get quite complicated with the more fancy versions, but it is something that's really attractive, and it's very good stitch at piecing pieces together, which is vital in the sort of form of slow stitch that I tend to do. It can look very different depending on what you use. This is done in wool, which is really thick and quite difficult to work with. These are mainly done in cotton perlé, which is my favourite, as everyone will see. This one's a variegated, so it's changing colour as it goes. And it also looks very different if it's done flat like this, as opposed to the very sort of pointed sort of wigwam effect. But I like all of them. I think they all look lovely. I've also got a couple here that are done just in either in thread or embroidery floss, in just one or two strands of that. So you can do it differently, and perhaps do a variety of them, which gives you a bit of interest, and also gives it a bit of texture, which I love in anything. I've done this one as well in a yarn. You know, you don't have to go out and buy a whole load of things to start up with. I mean, I would say for beginners, a cotton perlé is a really good easy. Cotton perlé 8 is a really good easy one. Cotton perlé 12 as well I do use sometimes, and that's a bit thinner, a bit more like this. Yeah, start off with something. Start off with what you've got, or if you like me, go out and buy everything, because you can do. But we'll have a look and see how we put this together, and then you can get an idea of how it works. So I'm just going to move this outside of the way. You will see when you come to do it that the wigwam or TP sort of reference does really make sense. So I'm left-handed, so apologies for that, but I'm going to go left to right. If you're right-handed, you may work the other way, so you'll just have to see what works best for you. So I've got my practice piece here again. It's just a piece of calico backed with felt, a bit like my sort of project pack there. So it's very worn and it's got lots of stab holes in it, but that shows that it's much loved and much used. I use this a lot when I'm learning stitches or when I'm teaching them. I also use it when I'm putting colours together, just to see what I think it looks like. So if we think of the wigwam, what you want is one end is going to have a sort of large gap, so it's going to be very stretched, and the other is going to be very tight. So if I do the first stitch, it's going to be basically just like almost like an offset cross stitch. So if I do the first stitch there, we've got our first stitch there. And then I do give it a little bit of tension, because the thread can get a little bit baggy, and that can affect sort of how the stitch looks. What I'm going to do then is slightly come back on myself. So you're thinking almost like the opening to the wigwam or TP. There. So if you're going very wide here, you're going very narrow here. And with this stitch, you're always working back on yourself a little bit as you go along. So it's just an easier way to sort of work it out. So then you can see roughly where I'm going to want to go down to make it fairly uniform. But as I say with all of my videos, And as I say with all of my students, perfection is not a requirement here. This is slow stitching. You're meant to be gaining a benefit from it, which is mental and emotional, and so therefore, you know, put aside perfection. I'm a terrible perfectionist, and I struggle to do that, but I have got better. I've got better at it. So you can see here what I'm meaning about the sort of TP effect. In fact, I'm going to come down a little bit closer there so you can see. So you've got that narrow, almost like an opening there, and then you've got this very wide side here. Now when you're coming to do the next stitch, the roles are going to be reversed. You're going to come back on yourself. So that's the thing to remember. You're always coming back on yourself from the previous stitch where it's ended. So if you imagine, I'm now making the next one of these. So I'm coming back on myself and I'm coming up here to make that next stitch. And then that's how you carry on from there. The other thing that I do, if I show you, when I'm working on the bottom layer, again, I'm coming back on myself to make the little wigwam opening there. The other thing I do, which I find helpful, is when I'm holding the thread like that to see roughly where it goes, I roll it to and fro until I sort of think, yeah, that's about right, and I'm going to go down there. It's just a little tip that you may or may not find useful. The other thing that you can do, which I know some people find really useful, is to get a friction or another sort of heat dissolvable pen and draw yourself 2 lines, so you know that you're always coming up and down on those lines, and then you can obviously iron them out. That can be quite helpful. So this is your pretty standard. That's a little bit too wide there at the bottom, but anyway, then I'm being a bit perfectionist, aren't I? Let's move away from that. So there we go. So that is literally your herringbone stitch. So you've just got to remember you're doing like an offset cross. You're moving the right hand side of the cross, or if you're right-handed it may be the left hand side of the cross, over, so you're just coming back on yourself slightly each time. And as you can see, I haven't probably given quite enough tension there because this bit's a little bit wobbly. But again, gonna let it go. I won't start singing, but let it go. And there we go. So when I come down on this part, as I say, what I do often is I roll the thread and I think, where is it? It's about there. And then I'll go in there. And that's it. So that is the herringbone stitch. You can also do it a lot flatter. So if I just change threads to a different colour, I can show you. Let me just chop that one off. And I'm going to go in another colour. Let's see what we've got here. Nice purple. Okay. So another style, as I say, is a flatter one. So what you do with this, it's the same, absolutely the same idea, but you're not going up so high. You're going to make it flatter. So you're only going to maybe come up to here, say. And then I come back on myself and I do the next stitch. And as I say, these are very good stitch for joining 2 pieces together. I've also done it, and I will try and find the example here for you, where I am just going over a piece of ribbon and I'm just going really either side of it just to keep it in place, and that can look really effective. Let me see if I can find that for you. So there we go. So we're just coming back on yourself, and in this case I'm doing it a bit flatter, but it gives a really nice, really attractive stitch, doesn't it? With that sort of offset cross, and again you can see it's still a sort of teepee wigwam shape, but you're just doing it a little bit flatter. I will show you one more, because there are some really fancy additional bits to this, and I know I'm sort of touting this really as a beginner's, but to give you another idea, let's do this in a bright colour just so you can see it. Hopefully it's a little bit dark here today, so I do apologise if the quality's not great, but we will persist. Here we go. So I'm going to do, this is a flax that I've used here for the feather stitch. It's a little bit more fiddly, it's a linen, but it's a little bit more fiddly to work with. What you can do is once you've gone over with the one colour, you can come up to the left of the opening of the teepee and just do a little stitch over the top. Just makes it look a little bit more fancy. Some people do even a cross, so you go over both ways and it just gives it a slightly different look. So you can then go here and do either just a stitch over in a coordinating contrasting colour, or you can do a little cross. There are some really fancy versions. If you can, get yourself a stitch directory, borrow one from the library, or see if you can get one second hand, because stitch directories are brilliant. There are some versions of Herringbone Stitch where they are doing weaving in and out. It's absolutely wonderful. But for the purposes of this, as you can see, we just do something a little bit extra on there, but just to get used to the basic stitch. As I say, I hope that's been helpful. I'll show you some examples of where I've used this. So this is one of my stitch cases that I make, and I've used it along the edge here, and it's keeping two pieces of fabric together, which, as I said, is something it's very good for. And I love it in this coordinating colour, in this green. It really just sort of you know, pops, doesn't it? It really stands out. And again here I believe I have used it here. I'll just have to try and find it now. Here we go. On this little heart, I'll have to zoom in a little bit. You can see here underneath these bullion roses, I've gone along this piece of ribbon to attach the ribbon to the other piece of fabric underneath. So I'm layered up here. I do love to layer, and then I've gone over the top with these bullion roses, which is a bit more of an intermediate advanced sort of stitch, and very fiddly but absolutely beautiful. So you know, you can see there that you're using it. I'm using it here more, it is decorative, but I'm using it more as a practical stitch to keep this bit of ribbon in place. Yeah, it does look really effective, and I do use these stitches a lot. I mean, most of them, you'll see I have got some here. That's in a variegated yarn, so that's sort of going across there, and it's keeping these two pieces together again. So it's very useful for that. And I'm just going to see this one here. Again, keeping two pieces of fabric together, but it's also very decorative. It's a lovely stitch. It's one that I go back to time and time again. Finally, this one. Again here, got it there, and along with the other stitches, feather and French knot and so on. That's a fly stitch there. You know, it's a seed stitch here. It you know, all goes together to make a nice piece. And finally, I will go back to the sheet here to show you again the different examples in the different sort of fabrics. So very thin, very tall stitches there, very flat stitches there, in a variegated, in a wool. I mean, it's different, it looks very different. here's just embroidery thread, just a simple embroidery thread, and the rest are cotton pearly 8. So you will hear me banging on about cotton pearly 8, but I do, I think it's a really good beginners thread choice, and I will do a separate video on thread choices anyway. So I hope that's helpful. Please do put notes in the comment. If you want to join the group, find the link for for Facebook, slow stitching by hand with Eleanor Grace, and yeah, hopefully see you again soon. Bye bye.